The first sound that cut through the quiet countryside evening wasn't the rustle of leaves, or the soft cries of a newborn. It was the deep, guttural growl of a German shepherd. The baby stirred in his mother's arms as the farmyard, usually alive with chickens clucking and wind whispering through the cornfields, was pierced by the pounding of paws tearing up the dirt. The air seemed to thicken, charged with something dangerous. The kind of moment when instincts kick in before reason does. Hannah Cooper froze for half a second, her arms tightening protectively around her infant son. Her brown eyes flickered toward the tree line, and then, she saw them. 4 shadows emerging. 4 young men in bright Letterman jackets, laughter spilling out of their mouths like poison. And then the real terror, 2 huge German shepherds straining against their leashes until finally they were let loose. The gang of boys hooted as the dogs thundered across the field toward Hannah and her baby. But Hannah's expression wasn't the wide-eyed panic they expected. Instead, something ancient and unshakable flickered in her face. Calm. Cold. Focus. Because before Hannah was a farm mom, she was a soldier. An ex-military canine handler who had walked battlefields where hesitation meant death. Where the dogs at her side weren't weapons of fear, but partners of loyalty and trust. And tonight, on this quiet farm road, the boys had no idea what mistake they had just made. Pause here with me. If you're someone who loves emotional, powerful stories where ordinary lives collide with extraordinary courage, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to SoulTouch Stories right now, because we bring you tales that grip your heart and stay with you long after they're over. Now, let's return to Hannah, standing tall on her farm, danger closing in. The leader of the group, Mason, was a tall, smug teenager whose father had been pressuring Hannah for months to sell her farmland. Mason thought this would break her, release the dogs, humiliate her, and scare her off her land. But Mason didn't see the subtle shift in Hannah's body as the dogs sprinted closer. She planted her boots firmly into the soil, lowering her center of gravity. Her free hand twitched as though it remembered the familiar tug of a leash, the snap of a collar chain, the soft squeeze of a command. The dogs closed in. Their teeth glistened. Their growls tore through the night. But Hannah didn't back up. She stepped forward. Her voice ripped through the chaos like a blade, sharp, precise, commanding. Not in English, but in German. Platz. The first shepherd froze, muscles locking mid-lunge, ears twitching in confusion. AUS. Sits, she barked again. The second dog faltered, then slowed, confused by the authority in her voice. These weren't just words. These were commands their bodies recognized, ingrained through training, impossible to ignore. The laughter of the boys cracked, replaced by stammering disbelief. Why the hell are they listening to her? One shouted. Because Hannah wasn't just a mom. She was someone who had lived and breathed with dogs fiercer than these, who had survived war zones with only her canine partner standing between her and death. To her, this wasn't terror. This was memory. The baby stirred again, whimpering in her arms. Hannah's heart clenched, not out of fear, but with a steel-hard promise. It's okay, she whispered to him. Mommy's got you. But Mason wasn't ready to back down. He pushed forward, sneering. Think this ends here? You don't scare me. The other boys circled closer, their bravado faltering but still hungry for dominance. Hannah's voice lowered, her tone shifting from harsh command to gentle reassurance, the way she used to calm her military partner, Shadow, a Belgian Malinois who had once saved her life in Afghanistan. She wasn't just commanding the dogs. She was reaching them. Slowly, carefully, Hannah placed her baby in the cradle of a hay bale nearby, wrapping him in her coat, shielding him from the wind. Her movements were deliberate, steady, never breaking eye contact with the boys. Then she straightened, her posture that of a soldier reclaiming ground. Leave, she said simply. Before you regret this. But Mason wasn't done proving himself. His pride was louder than reason. He motioned to one of his friends, who pulled a knife from his jacket. The metallic gleam caught the fading light. The shepherds barked, confused, torn between the voice they were trained to obey and the boys they had always followed. Hannah's mind raced through calculations, distance, reaction time, environment. This was no longer just intimidation. It was escalation. And she knew what escalation meant. The boy with the knife lunged. Hannah's whistle cut through the air, shrill and commanding. Instinctively, the dogs responded not at her, but at the attacker. With a blur of muscle and fur, they slammed him to the dirt, teeth snapping dangerously close to his throat. The knife flew from his hand, landing harmlessly in the grass. The other boys screamed in panic, backing away as their own dogs turned against them. Hannah didn't flinch. Her voice rang out sharp and steady. "Stay! Zurich!" The dogs froze, growling but holding, their loyalty redirected completely. Now the balance of power had shifted. Mason's face drained of color. His chest heaved as his bravado collapsed into fear. He stood frozen, staring at the woman who had just turned his own weapons against him with nothing but her voice. Hannah stepped forward, scooping her baby back into her arms, his tiny hand curling against her chest. "You came here to play war," she said quietly. Her voice shook, not with fear, but with fury. "But I've lived it. And I'll tell you this, war doesn't play with you. It destroys you." The boys stumbled back, panic overtaking arrogance. Then, one by one, they fled into the night, Mason tripping over his own feet in his desperate scramble to escape. The dogs, panting and confused, looked at Hannah once more before slinking off into the fields. She watched them go with something almost like sorrow. They weren't villains. They were victims. Trained to obey, never loved for themselves. The night fell silent again, except for the faint cry of her baby. Hannah sank to her knees in the dirt, tears stinging her eyes. She held her son close, pressing her face into his tiny head. For a long moment, she let herself feel the weight of it all, the war she thought she left behind, the peace she was still trying to protect, and the life she had almost lost in the span of seconds. In that silence, memories flooded her. Shadow, the dog who had once dragged her bleeding body to safety under heavy fire. Her comrades whose laughter she still heard in her dreams. The sacrifices that had carved scars in her soul. She had promised herself never again. Never again would she need to call on that part of her. But now she understood. You don't leave the soldier behind. You carry her into the life you build, because she is the reason you have it. The following days weren't easy. Mason's father sent men to intimidate her, to negotiate the sale of her farm. But when word spread through town of what Hannah had done, how she had stood her ground against boys, blades, and beasts, something shifted. Her neighbors, once distant, began to show up. Old Mr. Keller brought lumber to repair her fence. A young mother from down the road dropped off meals. Teenagers who had once looked away now stopped by to check in. The community, awakened by her defiance, gathered around her. Her farm wasn't just land anymore. It was a symbol. A stand. And just like Hannah found strength in her community, I want to invite you into ours. If this story has moved you, inspired you, or kept you holding your breath, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to SoulTouch Stories. Every single one of you is part of why we can keep sharing tales that matter. Back on the farm, Hannah's life settled into a new rhythm. There were still threats, still whispers of revenge from Mason's family. But she no longer faced them alone. And more importantly, she no longer faced them as a woman running from her past. She was a mother, grounded in her present, shaping a future where her son would grow up knowing that strength isn't always about fists or weapons. True strength comes from courage, compassion, and the promise to protect what matters most. One morning, as the sun rose gold over the fields, Hannah stood by the hay bale where she had once set her baby down in the midst of chaos. She held him again, now sleeping peacefully in her arms. She whispered softly, almost like a prayer. You are safe. Always safe. As long as I'm here. Because sometimes, the greatest warriors don't carry guns. They carry children. They carry hope. And they carry the unbreakable promise that no matter what the world unleashes, they will never back down. They unleashed dogs on a farm mom and her baby. But what they didn't know was that they had unleashed the heart of a soldier.